A podcast so hastily convened that we didn't even talk about what we want to talk about. So, oops.
Oops.
I mean, we already did one of these on Monday, so it's only
Yeah.
5 days ago that we had our last chat, and it wasn't that exciting a week. Can I tee up something though and just go off on it a bit?
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, in the written dispatch, I'm going to do what I meant to do in the last written dispatch. We came back on Monday with a welcome back dispatch, and I had said to you that I was going to do the Bill Morneau book, but the dispatch was just long. There was a lot of stuff in it. I didn't think it needed a whole other beat. So I have it half written already, and I'm just gonna put that into the next dispatch because it's still fresh enough. Like, the point I'm making is evergreen. But there's another federal story that popped up this week that I think is really, really interesting. And it was just a quirk of timing. So the city of Toronto this week came out with its annual city budget. And as you noted on your last visit to Toronto in the summer, when you actually stayed here for a bit visiting with family, city's a dump. Like, it's the roads
I don't think I said dumb. I just said gradually and incrementally deteriorating. Noticeably from like 10 years ago when I lived there previously.
City's a dump. Okay. The roads are in terrible shape. The trash bins are not getting emptied, or like the bathrooms don't work. The fountains don't work.
Basic shit's falling apart.
Yeah. And I think I might have mentioned this to you. I had a relative who grew up not only in Toronto, but grew up in my neighborhood. So like an apples to apples comparison. Mm-hmm. She married an American and lives in the States now. But in the summer, she was here for a visit. And she was like, Matt, what the fuck happened to the roads? Like, because like this is the neighborhood she rode her bike in, that she learned to drive in. And it was kind of, for me, it was a kick in the ass moment of, like what did happen to the roads? City of Toronto comes out with its budget this week, partially due to COVID, but mostly due to underinvestment. Right now, we have a $9.5 billion shortfall for state of good repair initiatives. Mm-hmm. Like, the amount of money, and I'm not talking about stuff that like between where we are today and what the budget should be, we're already $9.5 billion behind. And with the new budget being out, the forecast out is a decade. And instead of making progress on that, we're actually falling further behind. By 2032, it's going to be an $18.8 billion state of good repair shortfall. I want to just be clear for the viewers and the listeners here. What does state of good repair mean? It doesn't mean building a single new thing. It doesn't mean adding a bridge or building a new transit line. It means how much money would it cost to fix the stuff you already have. So when you have state of good repair problems, that means water mains will crack, subways will collapse, the roads will be so terrible your cousin visiting from Portland will be like, what the fuck happened? Like, this is what state of good repair means. I wrote a column for TVO where I just teed off on this because it pisses me off. I hate this kind of stuff. State of good repair is a special kind of neglect as far as I'm concerned, because it's not even failing to plan for the future. It's failing to put your toys away. Like, it's failing to load the dishwasher. Like, stuff like this makes me mad. And
also like, stuff like that, it accretes, right? To dramatically shitify somebody's quality of life, right? Like or as people within a city's quality of life.
It does, and it also, I think it's also politically corrosive, because you get a guy coming along and goes, "Who actually, I have a good idea to solve this issue, and it's a genuinely good idea," but no one believes him because the roads suck. Yeah. Like you have to keep the basic shit fixed in a society. So I wrote this column, and people are going, oh, look at these evil conservatives, Doug Ford and John Tory ruining the city. And look, if the shoe fits, wear it. Like, some of that criticism is valid for sure. But there was also Jacques Gallant at the Toronto Star who wrote this great piece saying that if you are looking at some kind of litigation or maybe a family law issue or an estate issue in Ontario right now, you might not get a court date until 2025.
Oh, that's fine. Especially for family law. That's totally wait.
One of the reasons is because there are dozens of vacancies in the court system for judges that the federal government hasn't filled. This is not the United States, where appointing judges becomes this weird partisan brinksmanship thing, right? Like, this is Canada. Government,
you get a fucking list, and then you
appoint. How many
them.
Do we need? 20. How many are on this list? 30. Drop the bottom 10.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's not complicated stuff.
There is obviously a vetting process, of course, because you don't
Yes.
want to, because we live in the Twitter age, right? Everybody's got bad tweets. We are so bad at getting stuff done in this country right now. These are not creating new judicial positions. We're not being like, well, where should we put the new courthouse? Where will we hire the staff? What jurisdiction will this court serve?
No, you just need to find competent, qualified lawyers to elevate.
There is an empty judge's seat, and we can't put a judge into it.
And those generally aren't that hard to fill with people who want to be judges. Am I wrong? Like, lawyers seem to be pretty happy to be judges.
Yeah, I've noticed. That is certainly my impression.
It's not my impression that, like, it's hard to find 20 lawyers who are like, yes, I would like to be a judge, please.
Not my impression either. And so basically, our largest city can't fix its roads, and over the next 10 years has a deliberate plan that the roads will get worse because all the budgetary money is going to other things. Some of which we can argue about, right? Like some of the money is going to transit expansion or replacing the Gardiner, which is really controversial in Toronto. But like we know where some of that money is going. But the other issue is simply that, and this is the Canada-wide issue that is really underwrites so much of what we talk about here at the line. We don't want to pay the full cost of the services we feel we deserve. Like we want platinum services on a bronze membership plan, and we're angry.
Everybody wants a deal.
Yeah, but we're deluding ourselves into thinking that someone out there is going to buy our lunch for us.
Well, the Chinese are typically buying up all kinds of things. Got to talk about to get the Saudis in here or the Qataris.
Yeah, get
some of their sovereign wealth funds going, kicking up.
Yeah, strings seem to be attached.
Always.
Anyway, so that's where my head is at.
Okay,
it's
so that's
top to bottom. We can't do the basics.
That's an interesting parallel to something that crossed my feed today, and that was the story about how Justin Trudeau met with the Japanese Prime Minister. Japanese Prime Minister was like, "We really would like some more natural gas." Trudeau's like, "Yes, we understand that."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which absolutely parallels the conversation that Trudeau had with the German counselor when he came to visit.
We would also love natural gas. That's right.
Yes, that's correct.
I acknowledge that you would like natural gas.
However, we are in an environment where the world is trying to decarbonize.
I remember about a year ago, after when the invasion of Ukraine was just starting, and the Europeans were kind of going, whoops, we should not have been totally energy dependent on the Russians. I did a series of articles for TVO basically about like Ontario's energy supply. And Ontario is relatively blessed. A lot of hydroelectric assets,
nuclear,
and a lot of nuclear. So we're not particularly vulnerable to fossil fuels. Like we are to some extent because we have natural gas for electricity generation and home heating. So it's not like we're not totally off fossil fuels, but relatively speaking, we're in a pretty good place. And I just asked some energy sector experts, like, what would it take to get Canada exporting more? The answer is not hard. Build pipelines that go to export terminals that you also have to build. So build the terminals, build the pipelines to them. Ships come, put the gas on, boom, off they go. What's the likelihood of building them?
Are you talking about the natural gas?
Yeah, LNG.
Yeah. So LNG is a little bit tricky because you have to liquefy it. So like there's a slight
terminal.
But there is a slight technical. It's not quite as easy as crude oils, but like yes, essentially. So yeah, no. So this whole got me. It got me thinking, and I actually have pitched a piece to the Times. So we'll see if they take it, and if they don't, I might write it for the Line or for the Globe. We'll see. But
which Times? New York Times?
Yeah,
the big.
I haven't heard back yet, so we'll see. But anyway, I was like, we're never going to supply the world with significantly more natural gas. We don't have it, but because we don't build anything here. Like that is mind-bogglingly beyond what we have the capacity to do. The idea that we could build a liquefied natural gas terminal in like 18 to 24 months in this country in a time of crisis is laughable. It's risible. There's just no planet in which would get the buy-in, the collective buy-in that would be required to build a pipeline and a liquefied natural gas terminal.
Even if we got it, we would find ourselves unable to build it.
Yeah, well, okay, so there's the technical, do we have the resources to the manpower to build it? No. Could we get the political buy-in across multiple provinces to get it done on an expedited schedule? No. And that's it. That's game over. Like, if you want to talk about a liquefied natural gas plant in Canada, you need to be talking about a 15 to 20 year time frame. We can't build anything. The most successful pipeline that we have, the most successful pipeline expansion that we can point to in the last, I would say, 15 years is TMX. And TMX was so dysfunctional that Kinder Morgan had to openly say, we can't support the continuing to own this pipeline because it's so politically dysfunctional, to such an extent that the federal government had to buy it in hopes of eventually selling it off, preferably to some kind of First Nations consortium, which they still haven't managed to do. That's our success story. It gets worse from there. So
I'm remembering Kevin Milligan a few months ago wrote a really good piece for us where he basically said that we were being too negative because there were a bunch of projects underway in British Columbia. In British Columbia.
Yeah. And none of them have been built yet.
Well, but like, I don't doubt the ability of any individual province within its own jurisdiction to go, we need this, we're going to build this. But as soon as you're getting multiple levels of government,
but even in British Columbia, you get the Site C situation. That was an absolute clusterfuck with lots of people, including First Nations people, opposing it. BC is also especially complicated because you have a whole bunch of unceded treaty land that hasn't been dealt with. So anybody that can claim that they have ancestral rights to this land can gain standing on any kind of major infrastructure project. I mean, like Kitimat, I think, is the one big LNG terminal that is still on the books. I mean, I need to check on what the timelines are on that for that. But look, we're not talking 18 to 24 months. This is getting built here, and then you add on that the federal no tankers and no tankers bans. So anything that's politically sensitive can't be shipped by a tanker off of a huge chunk of the BC coast, and that's just energy. Let's talk about infrastructure. I think somebody in one of our comments said something to the effect of, when I made this point in the previous comment about how we don't build anything before, they were like, well, we built the Confederation Bridge, and that might not have been a big thing to you, but for people in PEI, I mean, that was a big deal. It was one of the crucial promises of PEI entering Confederation in the first place. And I'm like, yes, you're completely right. The Confederation Bridge was a true engineering marvel that opened in 1997. I was in elementary school. That was the last one.
Well, the other snarky response could be, we promised them a confederation and we needed until 1997
to actually build the thing.
All right, we delivered on that promise.
We delivered the promise 100 years later. And I mean, you just look at this, and it's at every level. It's military procurement. How many years did it take us to get F-35s at that whole debacle, and then pistols? I mean, we've read about this before. Like, pistols are not a complicated technology. It took us 20 years to get our shit together. A country that cannot acquire pistols for its increasingly weakened military is not expediting a natural gas plant because the world's in crisis. It's just not going to happen. We're just not that functional as a country. We can't do it. We're too politically dysfunctional.
I'm not going to rant about guns again, but there was an interesting, during all the gun columns, I think it was Brian Lilly who wrote a column for The Sun, where he basically noted that the Liberals have been talking about the rifle buyback for years, but we still don't actually have a plan or a budget or a vendor or a service provider or logistics plan. So but the major logistical thing that we've gotten done in the last 7 years under Trudeau's era has been a legalization of cannabis. And that only got done as efficiently as it was because it was offloaded onto the provinces. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean,
and some of the provinces totally warped it, and some of the provinces did really well. I don't know what to, we're not functional as a confederation anymore, and I don't think have been for a really long time. So the idea that we could do a big national project in order to deal with an international crisis on a short time frame, particularly as it pertains to energy or natural gas, it's a fantasy. I just giggle when I think about this. It's not possible in this country to do that. Anyway, this is what got me ranting. And then of course The second thing that happened this week that was sort of a follow on the just transition stuff I wrote about for the Lions Dispatch on Monday was that you had Trudeau basically trashing Alberta and saying, like, you have this recalcitrant Alberta posse that doesn't believe in climate change, blah, 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 blah. So many people in Alberta are pissed off about that because, bluntly, we do have a climate change policy. We are doing carbon capture. We are doing all kinds of interesting technological stuff in order to bring down emissions issues. Like you can debate that, like whether or not it's effective or not, or whether or not it's the right policy approach. But Alberta doesn't have no climate change policy. It's just not true, right? So, Trudeau in this Reuters interview just throwing firebombs at Alberta. I mean, I understand why he's doing it. He's doing it for purely political reasons, but it's a lie. It's just not true. So I don't know. I'm just going to sum all that up into one kind of blurb.
I think I was reading from a few months ago. I think I sent it to you at the time. Paul Wells had a great essay where he talked about the transformation that the Liberals had gone through. He pegged it around 2018. Mm-hmm. It's a vague date, or they went from a government that wanted to get stuff done to a government that wanted to be seen opposing dark forces.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and I think there are dark forces. It's kind of like we were talking about when we were talking about misinformation in the Monday Dispatch. We don't deny the problem. We just think that given the choice to do deliberate, smart things to address the problem, or cash in on the Instagram clout for saying things about the problem, they might go that route. And I was just reading the again, this Paul Wells essay, which I guess we can link to, where once you decide your purpose is being on the right side of history, nothing else matters. And I think one of the things we've talked about in some of our dispatches is that when some of our Liberal friends, especially over the course of the pandemic, got out and went to do other things, moved home, had kids, like whatever, they had this weird sort of gradual return to reality, which is like, whoa, what the fuck were we doing for the last few years? And if you want to oppose dark forces, I'm all in favor of that, right? Because the old saying, all that is needed for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. So I'm all in on opposing dark forces, but let's actually oppose them. Let's not just say these forces are dark.
I don't know, man. I like, this is also the problem. Discerning evil from good in the moment is not always that easy. The world's complicated. Hard. It's not. No, yeah. Sometimes it's not hard. Sometimes it's not hard. But sometimes it's okay. Is supplying the world natural gas in order to allow European countries to get off its dependency on natural gas, is that good or evil?
It's good.
Or is it evil?
No, I would go with good.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, you could make a plausible argument for either, and that's most of the problems we face as humans, right? Like they're morally complicated questions whose moral weighting requires you to decide what kinds of things you value and how you're going to choose to value them. So, like, and there's not yes, no answers on all of this. So this is also the problem I have with, like, we're the goodies and we're the baddies. And I have a whole essay in my head that's been fermenting for years about the problem with trying to be on the, quote, right side of history. It's not your duty to be on the right side of history. It's your duty to live your life the best you can using the limited information that you have. You are not psychic. You don't have the ability to go forward in history and look back on the decisions you're making right now. If you did, there would never be anything called human progress because everything would be really obvious, right? But the problem is we don't live in a world where most problems are black and white issues and black and white solutions. A lot of problems are nuanced. And if you are trying to be on the right side of history, you've blinded yourself to the capacity for nuance. It's just, anyway, that's a whole other rant.
I mean, as human beings, I think our moral obligation is to not fuck up today.
I think that's a good moral obligation. But how do we not fuck up today is in and of itself going to be a debate and a half, right?
Yep.
But anyway.
No, I mean, when we've had in recent years all the debates about statues and reconciliation and stuff, I've never twisted myself into knots over the issue of, well, what about this person who was good by the standards of the time, but still had abhorrent beliefs? Was he good by the standards of the time? Yes, thank you. Because that was a brick in the tower of human progress.
Yeah.
And the brick is imperfect, right? Like, the guys who created the United States owned slaves, they still created the United States. Like, I don't get twisted up in knots about this. I don't require purity from my historical figures, and I don't require perfection from my present contemporaries. I just wish I wish I had the feeling on any given day that we were advancing, that we were making things better.
Well,
And
I've got some bad news for you, Matt.
that we are not. Yeah, no. It's funny too, because I guess it was earlier this week, or maybe it was last week. I don't know. I'm still half on it. Like, still, when I go on holiday, like, I lose all sense of time. So even though we've been back for a week now, I don't know if things happened like a week ago or a month ago. When did we announce the F-35s? Was that this week?
I think it was this. No, because we wrote about it in the last dispatch, didn't we?
I don't think we did.
No, so it must have been this week.
Okay, so if it was this week, a buddy of mine was saying to me, yeah, he says, I know we need jets. Like, he's like, I get it. Like, I really do. I'm not one of these guys like, oh, we don't need an Air Force. But he said to me, I'm not convinced we need the F-35s for the threats of today. I said, okay, but here's the problem. This country has a military procurement cycle from like need becoming obvious to completed program can be 30 years.
Yeah.
I said, I need you to tell me what our strategic situation is going to be in 2050.
Yep.
How about 2045? Hey, you know what? I'll go easy on you. Tell me what we're going to need in 2040. If we had a procurement system for military stuff, but I think for a lot of other stuff, that was nimble enough to work on like a 2 to 3 year timeline, we would be able to plan in the medium term. And we could probably be more efficient. We can go, hey,
sure,
this is the stuff we're realistically going to need over the next 5 years.
Yeah, so and we probably wouldn't have F-35s on the medium term list.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
But the problem is, if we're going to
pistols,
be
yes.
Pistols are important. But if we're going to basically buy planes once in the next 10 years that will then be in service for 30 or 40 years, you have to load up on every possible capability today.
100%.
You need to buy the most advanced plane you can in 2023, because you're not going to get them until 2027, and you're going to be using them until 2050.
That's about right. Yeah.
So if we were better at this, we would be way more efficient at this. But Andrew Coyne this week, is as he often does, teed off on this, and he makes the point: we don't have a military procurement system in this country. We have a regional economics benefit distribution system that we call a military procurement system. So we shouldn't be surprised to find it as dysfunctional as it is. Maybe that's a little blurb I can do as well. So I can do Morneau, I can do F-35s, I can do state of good repair and judges. You want to do Alberta? Honestly,
Alberta. I want to get into the fact that we don't build things.
Yeah.
And then maybe I can do the intro.
This in advance. I think we're actually coming up with.
This is actually going to be pretty strong. I mean, the other topic that I have just sort of loosely on my list here would be just the shift that's slowly occurring around the conversations on immigration policy, which is really interesting, because at no time in my life has it been normalized or in the discourse to really challenge increased immigration. Like and frankly, nor should it be, because we're not having enough kids to be able to justify not bringing in more people. But with the targets going up, there seems to be, for the first time, really more of a, okay, but wait a minute, where are we going to house these people? How are we actually going to support the population? Blah 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 blah. So anyway, that I think is potentially interesting, but maybe something to put a pin in, because I don't think that issue is going to go away.
Raheem Mohammed, an occasional contributor here at the Line, has written some good pieces for us about the demographic problems Canada has, and how our demographic problems are increasingly going to become political problems. And
yes.
He had said to me,
they're already economic problems.
Oh yeah, no, and we were like, I think it was a private conversation, so I'm not going to. Don't worry, Raheem, I'm not going to totally blow your cover here. But like, he basically just said, like, hey, like, thank you for publishing my article about this. And I said, oh no, this is an issue that I think is really important. And I said, I wrote a column about this way back years ago that like no one noticed at the time. And I went back and I found it. And it was in 2017, where I said, if we don't start fixing the failures in our immigration system, Canadians will turn against immigration. and I wasn't writing about housing. I was writing about was it Roxy Road or Roxham Road?
Roxham Road, yeah.
Yeah, and I was writing about that. I'm like, if we don't fix this, this is like the crack. This is where the water gets in. And then this multi-generation, multi-decade winning streak we've had on immigration. And I love immigration. I am overtly pro-immigration. But if we don't take care of things, they break.
Well,
State
no,
of good repair, right? It's
yeah.
the same argument, but it's
But
for
also, and
politics.
this is actually the real divide between, I think, Canadian and American conservatives. So increasingly one of many divides between American and Canadian conservatives. One, Canadian conservatives are not as socially conservative, and like I could go into a list, but the real striking one for me
We don't
is
have a
that
Mexican border.
yeah, we don't have a Mexican border. We just and also bluntly, our economic needs are so tied to high immigration levels that it would be economic suicide for any conservative to actually play against immigration. It's just not, that nativist kind of bend just cannot work
We're also
in the
good at
same way
immigration.
here.
We're good at immigration, though. Like,
we have been.
give
I don't
me
know if
your
we're increasingly getting incompetent at that, at everything, as we are with everything else, just in terms of managing processing times, right? Like,
yeah.
but
No,
that's a whole
fair.
other issue.
I talk about this with a buddy of mine who is he's a generation older than us, and he's a black man, and he grew up in same part of the city I grew up in, and he played hockey in the same leagues my son plays in, and the leagues are like way more diverse than they were when he was like the only black kid, like in the local hockey leagues. Something we talk about though is that like Canada, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. And in what, like, their parents are all going to be like particle, like the immigrants are all going to be like particle physicists driving cabs, but their kids are going to be doctors and beer drinking hockey hose heads, right? Like, we're good at that. We need one generation, but we're good at that. But if we start to break that consensus, I don't know. And if we start, it's going to be an interesting, I don't know what the tug of war is going to be, because I can see on the one hand people being like, immigrant go home, I can't afford a house in my neighborhood, but I can also see immigrant come here, I don't have someone to lift my mom in and out of the bathtub after her hip replacement.
Well, and
I don't know
this
which
is
way it's going to go.
the thing that's going to get really interesting is that you can talk to him about Canada's demographic collapse. The demographic collapse that's coming is going to be global, and it is going to be increasingly hard for Canada to compete for people, particularly young people, as our population ages out. So that has real far-reaching, weird economic implications. I mean, you have a lot of people saying like, look, the targets that the federal government is setting for immigration are so high. It's doubtful we're ever going to be able to meet them.
Yeah.
How many people want to come here, and how many of those people are actually new immigrants versus people on a permanent residency cards who just get their immigration technical status flipped, which means you still kind of have this weird situation where you have a really hot housing market with no real ability to support a growing mass of an immigrant population, while at the same time really low unemployment, because we don't have enough bodies, we don't have young bodies to sort of do the work that's going to increasingly need doing.
There's a real wild card here though, as goes America, because we had a real boost in recent years because a lot of immigrants looked at like Trump America and went, no, not for us. Like, we look better by comparison. If the US is more normal going forward, like less crazy, and like, what is DeSantis's view on immigration? Like,
isn't he the guy who shipped the illegal immigrants to like New York?
Yeah, he should. Well, I mean, in a bunch of other places, Martha's Vineyard too, I think.
Yeah.
But like, where does he stand? Or was that Abbott in Texas? I'm not sure which one it was. But
it was both of them. Anyway, we have to double check.
I would just be curious to see if the American right can settle into an immigration position that is tough on the border, but good on immigration. I also don't think the Americans have the demographic crunch we do, though. They'll get there.
They don't.
They
don't. They don't. And they're at replacement level in terms of the internal birth rate. They're actually one of the very few.
Are they dropping though? Like, they were 10 years ago.
They are dropping, but they're still above 2. So they're actually one of the few Western democracies that are it's like America and France, and that's it, that are at population level. So that's really interesting. Which means that their need for immigrants is significantly less. And if the world gets weirder and more insular and more collapsy, or economically more collapsy, then their anti-immigrant rhetoric just spikes, right? So I mean, it's a weird. I don't know what's going to happen on that file, but it's an interesting one. But anyway, I don't think we need to get into that in this dispatch because I think we've got lots of stuff to work with here.
You want to know? Okay, we can wrap it up because I actually got to go do it.
You got to go, yeah.
But do you want to hear one quick interesting anecdote?
Of course.
So it has been cloudy, heavily overcast in Toronto for more than 3 weeks now, consistently.
Okay.
It is depressing.
Okay.
Like, this city has been dark, no sunlight. I'm not normally affected by this. I like winter. Get a roaring fire going, have a nice bowl of chili, like we're Canadians. But it's been pretty grim. Like, there has not been a break in the clouds in 22 days as of Friday.
That's a lot. I'm sorry.
Yesterday, I was feeling glum. Like, not I wasn't in crisis, but I was like I missed the sun. Like, this is depressing. I didn't want to open the blinds because I knew it would be depressing out. And I look over on the shelf where my son's Oculus VR headset was sitting. I put it on and I searched on YouTube virtual reality, sunny nature. And I sat there for like 10 minutes in a fully immersive 360-degree VR scene of a meadow in sunshine, and it worked.
That's awesome, but also really scary.
I keep telling people who have not experimented with virtual reality, you will be shocked how good it is at tricking your brain. And this is first generation technology. I mean, I know it's not literally. Real nerds for this stuff would probably tell you we're on like VR 7th generation, but we're at like the Nintendo Entertainment System level of VR. 30 years from now, this stuff is going to be indistinguishable from reality. I stood in a simulated, like, sun-drenched meadow for 10 minutes, took off the headset. I was like, that was good. I feel better. Like, I feel like I actually got some sunshine there. I didn't, of course. I was sitting in my living room. I still don't think VR technology is quite ready for prime time. I do think society isn't grappling yet with how transformative this could be, and maybe in dystopian ways.
So I also have an anecdote for you. It's 9 degrees and sunny and beautiful in Calgary right now. And we had that really brutal cold snap right over Christmas.
Yeah.
And since then, for the last 2 weeks, it's been like beautiful highs above freezing, above zero every day. And we'll be like this foreseeably as long as the forecast goes. So if this is our new winter, sort of above freezing, sunny, I'm okay with it. I'm good with it.
Toronto has been above,
really nice.
Toronto has been mostly above freezing for weeks, but it's been rainy and like bleak.
It's been like Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like we've got the best of the Calgary sun, but without the terrible temperature.
Oh,
it's been really glorious. It's been the most beautiful January.
If it's still looking that way, well, actually, no, the weather forecast says we're actually gonna get some real sunshine. So I'm gonna go stand in a parking lot tomorrow, just like with my arms out, being like, sunlight. But it's been pretty depressing. So I'm looking forward to a break in the weather.
I'm gonna go for a really nice walk in the park.
Well, you do that. All right. So I'll get this out as usual Friday evening-ish, and then we'll do a written dispatch for the weekend.
Okay, sounds great.
Anything else?
No, so I'm doing Trudeau in Alberta, I'm doing Japan and how we don't build things, and then I'll do the intro.
Yeah, and then I can do Morneau, I can do a state of good repair, and that other thing that I don't remember anymore. So I'll just listen to this and be reminded.
Okay. If I'll do the intro, I'll handle it last then. So
okay, perfect. Well, thanks everybody. That was very efficient for us. Have a good day.